see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank
Even
you
if it is digital.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you get to see each other without the mask on.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, Paloma, I'm going to kick it to you to kick us off.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Well, first and foremost, hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you sharing your time with us today and coming to see us in this event, and also Kerry interviewing Mel Harper today. So woo-woo. Before I do let Kerry and Mal go ahead and take it away, I do want to present a short little video that kind of gives you an introduction of MalLabel music. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so y'all can watch that. It's about 38 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and get right into the workshop. We will have some questions at the end for the last 15 minutes. So if you have any questions or you can't think of any at the moment, as the workshop goes along, just keep those mentally noted and we'll answer them at the end. Alrighty, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and show y'all this video.
Change and become like a passion project, like shifts the focus where like I feel like I could be doing this forever, and like that's we're malleable, like we can always like what we're doing and we haven't pigeonholed, which is great. But you know, our focus shifts. I feel like we're very like I feel like we changed a lot of what our strategy is from here over here.
Flex the speakers, 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 flex.
I was so happy when I saw that on YouTube. I'm like, that's the perfect intro. Get me started up in here. So I want to welcome everybody to Workshop Wednesday. This is hosted by the SF Depot, which is the premier entertainment venue at the San Francisco State University campus. I want to thank Paloma for putting it all together, and also to Horace Montgomery, who's the Senior Director of Production at Associated Students. So thank you to you both, helping us make this happen for the students and beyond. And if you do think of questions, I would say keep them going in the chat, and then at the end we will get to them for you. My name is Kerry Fiero, and I was in the music industry for about 20 years. And then I pivoted into the event industry. I also am adjunct faculty at San Francisco State University. I teach in both the music recording industry program as well as the event planning program. So I'm super happy that we're able to do this virtually. And I'm happy to bring in colleagues of mine to talk to you all tonight. MalLabel Music is a grassroots, women-owned independent label that has grown to represent international artists and some of the biggest names in West Coast underground-based music. Having amassed dozens of Beatport top 10 and top 20 dubstep, glitch, hop, and hip-hop releases, and critical acclaim in Complex, Herb, and Vibe magazines, MalLabel's signature West Coast flavor is achieving international appeal. So tonight we have the founder of MalLabel Music, and I gotta tell you, Paloma said, you know, if I had a wish list, it would be a female that owns a record label. Do you think there is such, you know, do you find such? And I said, there's one person that I am definitely calling. And so please welcome the founder of MalLabel Music, Mal Harper.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. So first, we're going to start with, for anybody that might be on here that doesn't understand even what the kind of music we're talking about is, before we get into you personally, can you explain a little bit about bass music, trap music, dubstep, EDM, sort of how they're interrelated and how they're different?
Sure. So bass music primarily comes from like a sound system culture where essentially like you have to have like huge subwoofers and a massive sound system in order to really encompass and hear the music. And people are called bass heads because essentially the vibrations of the bass are like you can feel them full body. And that's, I think, really kind of part of the whole like thrill of attending like a bass music show is it's very vibrational. I'd say the music itself has roots in hip hop, especially like trap, but dubstep has a lot of like drum and bass elements to it. It kind of exploded out of the UK into this swampy, darker sound, a little slower than drum and bass. And then it came over to the US, and then really like Skrillex is the one that kind of popularized it here. And then it just like blew up and became very, very mainstream. In that same vein, the glitch hop has like kind of breakbeat elements to it and hip hop elements. Trap is very, it's now very mainstream, but our type of trap is basically the beats without the full-on rap lyrics over it. Usually you just get a hook or like a main like vocal element to it because it's more dance floor elemented. All four of these genres, they all kind of, a lot of DJs these days tend to play multi-genre. They don't just stick with one. And these types of musics just tend to, with the BPM, flow really well into one another. There are, of course, DJs that just play, you know, they're just very singular genre, but there are a lot of other DJs out there and a lot of festivals, a lot of music events that take these genres and kind of push them all in together, where you'll get a show that has all of these various elements plus a ton of other different elements as well, which is really the cool thing I think about music, this type of music. EDM very much got popularized, I think, through the festival culture and very commercialized. We are definitely not that. Our scene started in like warehouse parties, started in the Burning Man scene, where it's just a lot of people collaborating on that level. And if anything, when people kind of blow up and go mainstream, people kind of in our community stop really listening to them and try to look for like the next underground, because it's that thing where you're always trying to find the next hot person that, you know, nobody's ever heard of before. And then once it gets popularized, you're not such a big fan. And I tend to see that a lot in our community. They like to keep it underground. They like the smaller parties, the intimacy of smaller festivals. And then Burning Man, of course, is like a capper of the year for a lot of people that like this type of music. And you know, we threw a festival ourselves, and events were a really big part of like pushing out the music that we're doing and developing the ambience that the music would be the centerpiece of, but you also have this really cool environment to enjoy it in. And so I think that it's completely different than going to like an Electric Daisy carnival or something like that, where I don't think people really understand the music. They're there more for the party, versus in our community, people really follow the music and are very like snobby about it.
That answered my second question, which was, what does it mean to be underground? And it's really like, in a way, it could be cutting edge, new.
Yes.
It could be a different definition.
Yeah, it's part of just kind of being that, you know, putting together things on what you have, using your collaborations within your community to basically create something that, you know, you wouldn't find in a normal like commercial club element. Like we always had a lot of like visual elements. We have live painting, live artists. We have like live performance dancers. Like it was starting to become a thing where like aerialists would get involved, and it was this whole like performance piece under itself. A lot of like themes as well. Like I really like enjoy a good theme, and then you can kind of center the music or the event around it. We're actually doing that with our latest release that's coming out. We have a whole Blade Runner theme happening, which has been kind of fun. Gustavo El Diablo, he's helping me now doing the day-to-day operational stuff, and he has a lot of FX skills, so he's been able to like make some really dope videos that kind of center around this theme. But yeah, underground is basically just kind of being part of this small, more intimate community, and being and putting out artistic elements and stuff that people haven't heard of before. Some of it goes far, and some of it just, you know, it stays within the community. But I feel like it's really tight knit, but it is an international community for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the difference for me. It's not commercialized as a, you know, a
Gotcha.
club event or a festival with that
Gotcha.
forth.
Cool, that's cool, because I just wanted to like start with that, so like we know what we're talking about here when we say that you know, you're the West Coast underground bass music spot to be. Like, what does that mean? So thank you for
Sure.
saying that. So let's get a little bit into your background, and then we'll get into like the whole creation of the label. So where are you from, and did you grow up with a musical family?
Yeah, yes, my dad was in a jazz band, and he was a drummer. And so I grew up with him going to a lot of shows, listening to a lot of jazz music. And this is in Omaha, Nebraska. So we didn't really have a lot of like cultural elements. So my dad was the one that really exposed me to a lot of like Motown, jazz music, that kind of style. And it was just like the band that he was in, the music that he liked. And I really got into rhythm and just I started learning drumming myself, but I found that I more liked to be on the behind the curtain instead of in front of the curtain, and that started from a very young age, like even doing events and things like that in high school. But I always was really drawn to rhythmically based like Motown music that then segued into like, you know, 80s hip hop, that then segued into like 90s like Bay Area like hyphy. And then that was like a good segue for me into, I started going to shows out here with like Sound Tribe Sector 9, kind of more jam band dance shows, but then they would have like DJs like the Glitch Mob be in their, when they had a break between sets. And that music just really spoke to me because I love dancing. I love the beat. I love the energy of it. And to be able to create and be that vibe, it was just such a wonderful moment in time of seeing that come out of nowhere. And really it just came specifically out of the California West Coast community, specifically San Francisco. And there's a lot of elements taken from the hyphy like hip hop community that's here as well. And so those correlate a lot. Like when we did our festival, we had E40 headline. We've done a release with Too Short. Like there's a lot of similarities, but you know, also the differences that make the music unique in itself. But yeah, that's kind of my background. It started with jazz and then slowly grew up a little bit more into now.
So you grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. So where did you go to college?
I came out here and I went to school at Santa Clara University, and I started throwing parties there just to make a little bit of money, you know, have a little extra cash. And I was a singer in a band, and we would book ourselves at our own house that like, you know, a bunch of us like had, and then we would charge like $5 at the door and have like a keg or something. But those were like my first paid parties that I did. And after I graduated, I was like, what the, like I had a philosophy degree, and I was like, what am I going to do with this? And just didn't really know like what my passion was, besides the fact that I really love music and I loved events. So I was like, let's do this. Like, this is, you know, this is my interest. I'm good at doing this. Like, why not try to make it happen and try to make it happen in San Francisco? So when I graduated from school there, I just came out here. I got kind of just random odd jobs, but that's when I started MalLabel, which originally started out as a pure event company. And Gustavo, actually, he's on the line too. He was my first partner, and he's been with me from the very beginning, and we threw our first shows together as well. So that was about
Let me stop you for a second. So hi, Dad and Mom. I got my degree in philosophy, and I'm about to stay out here and run a label. How did that go over?
Oh, not good. My father was very, very unhappy. I actually was like kind of cut off. I was the black sheep of the family for a while. He did not understand that decision, especially because all my brothers are like lawyers or like one's a professor. So I was definitely, he was just worried about me.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was a struggle to start out originally, but I think we hit it at the right time as the music was just starting to become popular. And so we had a lot of really initial early success because we were the only people throwing like dubstep shows, throwing underground warehouse parties, and really like showcasing the music that was of the Bay Area. And, you know, I have to say too, the way we made money is not a way I would advise. We were doing illegal bars, and, you know, that's kind of how we were, you know, really raking in the dough was
But how do
doing the
you
bar.
go from the little house party in Santa Clara to the big event? Like, what's the like process?
Sure.
You know, because there might be some man here that's like, I'm doing the little house parties now. I'd like to get to the next level.
Sure. The way that I got my start is you had to find a venue at first. And so I literally I went through and researched all of the music venues that were small and that I knew would possibly want to take on like maybe 100-person event. And I literally just started cold calling all of these different venues like that would see if they would possibly let me host. Usually you can cut a deal with the bar where, you know, you get tickets and then the bar makes their money on selling alcohol. And I was finally able to find this tiny little venue. It doesn't even exist anymore. It's called the Ellery Con. It was in the Mission, and they had a little stage. It was probably about a 150-person event. And at our first party, they took us on with the condition that, you know, they get all the bar receipts and we can have whatever at the door. So we just really at the time, because social networking didn't really exist, we were just pounding the pavement. We printed out a bunch of flyers. We would go to actual like other shows that we thought people would be interested in, and we would wait to the end of the show and like hand out flyers and individually like talk to people and be like, hey, like this is what we're doing. And you know, it actually worked. We had a pretty big turnout for our first party. We almost packed the whole club. And I was surprised. I mean, when I say packed, it was like 100 people. I mean, but for us, that was a really good turnout.
Sure.
We were brand new. I mean, no one had ever really heard of us or like really what this music was. And I think that the thing that really worked for us was that we were actually, like, when I was flyering, it was me, the promoter, actually like talking to people and trying to sell them on what we were doing. And really having that individual connection, which you can still do today. And honestly, you know, social networking is great and all the ad buys and all the things you can do. But if you can make a personal connection with people and have them remember you and have them show up at your event, I think it's a longer lasting connection that you'll make, because I would have people the same people over and over that would come to my events every time, because you just build up that fan base by having that personal interaction. And that's, I mean, it's super grassroots style, but it really worked for us. And it really, like, we didn't start online anything. I don't think like Facebook existed until about 2 years into us really doing this. So everything was just street team, pounding the pavement and personal interactions. And then Facebook allowed us to get more wider audience reach. But even today, like the promoters I know all still have street teams. They all still the poster and flyer. But I really think the difference that you can make is, I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but standing and meeting all those people as they're coming out of another event and trying to make those connections, it really worked for us. And I do attribute a lot of our initial early success on making those connections and just kind of working our asses off on just trying to get the word out like as far locally as possible. But obviously things are way different now, but I mean, street teams still can be very, very effective.
How was it, like in terms of the challenges of being a female that was a promoter?
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of people didn't even think that I was the promoter. And like, I would get a lot of like, where's Mal? And thinking Mal was Malcolm. And I was Malcolm's girlfriend. So it was a lot of confusion of that. But, you know, honestly, when I did a lot of my bookings and things like that, it was all online. And then then they would meet me for the first time, like at the event or, you know, probably the night of. And as long as I paid them and everything went smoothly, the artists were generally happy. I think that there is definitely a boys club that it makes it harder to, as a woman, to kind of like break into, in that I felt like it was hard to make collaborations happen, and no one was reaching their hand out to me and wanted to, you know, they were already doing their events. They didn't reach their hand out to me, whereas I saw that kind of that boys club where men promoters would tend to help each other more than they would somebody like me. And I think that was the real difference, because I didn't have that connection. And I still think too that the behavior sometimes on like, we've had some incidences, I don't need to like name names, but I think some of these male promoters could be really sexist and have some bad behaviors that that have been very present at some big clubs that I know of here, where, you know, sexual harassment happens, or like they don't like a woman's attitude to them, so they won't book them anymore, and just shit like that. And I know a big time club in the city that is still working with a male promoter that has been accused of all of these behaviors, and he's still working there. So, you know, it's stuff like that. You're like, I mean, that person should be fired. Like, why aren't they being fired? It's because of their, you know, connections or nepotism or whatever. Because in my mind, if I had somebody acting that way, I would fire them on the spot. But it doesn't really seem to happen people don't really get to be held at the same standard of accountability in the music community. I think a lot of bad behaviors like it's slid over if they're bringing in the money. And I don't appreciate that about the business, and I don't think a lot of women do.
And there's for these genres of music, the women are music buyers. The women come out to the shows and the events, so there is a huge female fan base.
Mm-hmm.
There's just not as many female working in this promotion, for example.
Yeah, I only know one other female promoter, Eva. Ultraviolet. She's actually been doing it way longer than me. She's a DJ and also a promoter, and her events are great. But she's had a lot of issues that she's had to deal with over the years of just being mistreated, unpaid. And I would say that in our fan base, women are half of our fan base. And we are a label that has probably more women artists on it than any other label, especially in my genre, and especially in the California community. And that's, I think, because I'm a woman, and I want to make sure that we have diversity, and I want to up other women artists and have them have the opportunity to shine. And I don't think still to this day that they have the same opportunities that male artists do. I think too, with Me Too, it happened in our community and it started that conversation, but that was really only in the last like year and a half. And, I'm still hearing negative stories, and I'm still seeing the differences in the mistreatment. So it is frustrating, I would say, but there is a light in that I am seeing more female artists finally get bookings, finally get releases, but it's definitely not on the same parity as men are.
All right, I'm gonna take you back to, I mean, you know how I feel on all that, on that subject, you know, but let's just keep promoting other women and lifting up our allies and our colleagues. Okay, let's talk about the birth. Oh wait, before we talk about the birth of your label, let's talk about you going to school, both at San Francisco State, and what you ended up becoming in your day job.
Sure. So, after I was doing the events for a couple years, I wanted more education on promoting. I wanted to learn how to brand build, and I actually came to SFSU, and with you and Gian, like, you guys were my mentors at the very beginning. Like, I learned like how to actually develop a logo, develop the brand awareness around that, have that consistency, and how to like target my fan base. And it was, for me, it was a huge deal to learn all of that and have that knowledge, because it just on your own, when you're doing it on your own, you do learn a lot by experience, but it was just a more clear plan on how to move forward, that I think I was like kind of at a plateau stuck point. And, the music business program really helped kind of laser focus me on building that brand awareness, which I think as soon as we started like with the logo rollout, and we started doing these like mal parties where we had like malpractice, malware, and then we had this like really like it's the logo that we use now, and we started branding all of our stuff. And everybody, like, we had these bandanas we would give out, and everybody we would give them out for free too, which was great because everybody would wear them at other events, and then it continued this publicity. And that's when our growth really started to skyrocket, is when that kind of brand was cemented as this is who we are, and we really found our core audience base. I think before it was a little bit too broad, and I kind of didn't have a real focus yet. And school really helped me achieve that. And I'm very thankful that I took the program. And honestly, it helped my dad take me a little more seriously too.
I totally relate because, you know, it's not until I worked for SF Jazz that my dad was like, all right, the music industry might be something. So I totally relate. All right, so tell us about your accounting degree.
Sure. So, you know, I love the music business. It's my passion project, but I wanted to have, it's very feast or famine. I've found in my career, like things go great, you make a good money and you're really stoked, but then other times you can have a crappy event or a release doesn't go well and the money that you were planning on being there just wasn't there. And so after about 5 years of just doing MalLabel full time, I decided that I wanted to have kind of more of a steady income stream, and that would help support the label more and help me expand like the advertising that I could be doing, the merchandise, the artists that I could be working with, because I was working on a very limited budget. And so I decided to go back to school at the time, and I had already for 5 years been doing my own accounting, taxes, bookkeeping. I had various friends of mine start asking me for help on setting up their financials. And so I ended up going back to school specifically for marketing because I thought that that could help blast off MalLabel even further in a master's program. And then I ended up finding out that I really liked my accounting classes. And I double majored for my MBA, and I got a marketing and accounting degree. And then accounting has just been kind of my day job for the last probably 7 or 8 years, where it basically allows me to have this sustainable income stream that I can budget and then push money back towards MalLabel, my passion project. Ideally, I would love for MalLabel to be my full-time gig, but it's with just being underground, being grassroots, and having that also be a part of our what we're about and what our brand is. The income is more on and off, as I said before. So it's been really great to kind of have that full-time job, and then I do MalLabel as like a passion project. And it's a lot of work, but it's definitely my baby, and it's for sure worth it.
Let's talk about the birth of the label in 2008, how you pivoted from being primarily a promoter doing events. You did the Nightmare Before Christmas party at the Gingerbread House in 2008. An iconic party, and that went until 4 a.m. And after that, it seems like you really focused in on creating a label. So what was the thinking behind that?
Yeah, I was meeting a lot of awesome artists that basically they had this fantastic music. They would send it to me, and then, basically they couldn't get it out there. No big label obviously was willing to kind of pick up these small guys that, you've never heard of before. And even just the process of trying to self-release music was nowhere nearly as easy as it is now, where you can, essentially pay to get your music on Spotify or use a service. Back then there was really nothing like that besides a TuneCore, where they still even had to accept you to be part of their distribution program, and you still had to pay. So I was running into a bunch of artists that were I really want to get my music out there. I don't know how. And it seemed to be this opportunity where it seemed to just kind of be the perfect stepping stone. Having these artists' music that I totally respected and thought was fantastic, putting their music out there, promoting it, and then booking them at my events. So it was this kind of full circle service where we would basically be representing them on a music capacity, and we would be booking and promoting them on a live event level. So it just seemed to really make sense at the time. And that's about the time that I came into school at San Francisco State and started learning the marketing and even music distribution process, what's publishing, what does a contract look like, and all of those ins and outs. And it was, again, that education that helped me start the business from the ground up. I learned basic contracting techniques, how to just draft something and get the terminology down, and then the marketing behind it. And then for me, I was originally using a service to distribute, but then I got in with what was it called? In Grooves was the distribution company. I had enough bigger names at the time that was able to convince them that I was legitimate enough to distribute. And that was part of my process as well, where I would release total unknowns, but I would also pay a licensing fee to like a bigger name to be able to kind of establish ourselves more quickly in the industry, that, hey, like, we're working with so-and-so who, you know, and those releases would obviously, you could count on doing well comparatively to an unknown where it was always like hit or miss. And so once I got kind of a good roster going of maybe at the time it was probably less than like 5 or 7 releases, I applied to In Grooves, they accepted us, and then they started doing all of the distribution, but we still had to do the marketing and all of the, like, you know, the grassroots push behind it. And after about a couple years of working with them, I moved over to Stefan France's independent distribution. Yeah, you know Stefan. He really believed in me, and I love working with him because he actually helps with marketing. He's gotten us featured on like iTunes. He's gotten us connected to like Too Short. Like, I never would have like been able to make those connections without him. So that was I feel like a good stepping stone. They took less of a percentage and then gave us more service wise, because they really wanted to support independent labels, and they're San Francisco based too. So I think I just, you know, we had been working together now for about 6 years, and they've just been fantastic. And I would recommend working with them to any local label if they can, because they do so much.
I would too. And even the independent artists that don't have a label, they do great marketing and assistance in other ways to independent artists. Okay, so you launched your label. Is it primarily, did you decide to do digital releases, or was there also vinyl in there?
We thought about it. I did one CD release like a couple years ago. It's really hard. I mean, vinyl for sure is selling more in our scene versus CDs or anything else. Randomly, tapes came back for like a really brief period of time. Yeah, it was supposed to be like, you know, millennial ironic, I think, but nobody had a tape player.
Right.
So those didn't go too far. But we tried it, and honestly, it just didn't work for us. It was it was too much inventory holding, and then having to mail and ship it, and all of the work involved for like the profit margin just really wasn't worth it. And then plus, you end up having to press like at least 100 records. So if you don't sell those, then you have like all of these like records that you just have to store somewhere. And we would give away like our CDs that we printed like eventually at the end. But I prefer digital because it's just so easy to track all the metrics behind it. You can see who's buying it, what songs exactly they're listening to. And honestly, for us now, it's not even purchases. It's all of our sales come from streaming. Spotify is like our main breadwinner. And I love it because I get this huge data download every single month from my distribution, and I can see all over the world what tracks people are playing, for how long they're playing them. And they're actually paying us, versus like some of these other services like Pandora or even like SoundCloud. It's just you have to just keep trying to get money to pay you. And Spotify is really, really legit, and they're our biggest revenue source right now. And I think most artists would see that their sales are not coming from actual sales now. They're coming from streaming.
Wow. How many artists, say a month, are writing to you and trying to get put on the label?
I would say we have like a demo box, and then I also have like people just find my email somehow. So I get directly probably about 5 to 10 monthly, and then our demo box is anywhere from like 10 to 30. So we get a lot. I mean, most of it's not good.
I was gonna say, after 22 years, like, are you like, yes? Or are you like, oh God, I have to go through these?
Yeah, it's more like the second reaction for sure, because usually it's just like not great. And it's a lot of artists just unfortunately think that, hey, I'm on a label now, the label's gonna, a lot of young new artists think that us, the independent label, is gonna market and blow them up. And I love supporting independent artists. We've had a ton that, you know, nobody's ever heard of, but the frustration for us was that they wouldn't put in the same amount of work that we were putting in marketing wise. And even we put together a whole like school 101 on how to do this. We would walk them through. But in the end, if the label can only do so much, if the artist is not willing to put in the same amount of marketing work, and if anything, they should be doing more, you know, it's just not going to go anywhere. And I realized, you know, our last release strategy was to release a lot. Like we were releasing like 3 releases a month, like 2 years ago. And it was crazy. I was just way too much, but I was getting so much great music. And I wanted to represent it all at the time. We were really on a roll. And then, you know, like artists that we released would introduce us to friends, or we were just getting a lot of consistent good stuff. And I didn't want to say no. But I realized after looking back that that strategy just wasn't a good strategy for us, because it was just too much. You weren't giving enough time to really promote. And then it made us kind of look like we're not super curating as some other labels do. So our new strategy this year, which I think is really working for us, is we're going to do, instead of a full release of one artist, we're going to curate compilations of 2 big names, 2 up and coming names, and then we're going to release them only one at a month, one per month, 1 track per month, because I find that most people do not listen to a full album these days. They want something very short, and they want every single track to be, you know, a solid hit. And, you know, you just aren't going to get that with a 7 or a 10 track LP or EP. And I found that most people would zero in on the 2 hits of the track and then not listen to anything else. So this new strategy we're just trying this year. So it's kind of we're going to see what the data shows us. But I think putting more promo time under one specific single seems to really be hitting with our audience. We're putting out this track. Our newest release is called Neo Noir, and our first track is with this big dubstep artist. His name is The Whittler. He's very big here, and he's big in the UK. And we've been getting a great response from all the promo. It actually comes out on the 15th. So what day is it? Tomorrow. Does it come out tomorrow? Is today the 14th? Oh my God.
Yes, tomorrow.
So that's that. But I would say, just as our name is MalLabel, we do try a lot of different things. We change our strategy like almost every year. I try to look back, see what worked, what didn't work, and then we re-strategize for the future. So I think this is working, especially right now when everybody's at home and just craving new content. We're actually even going to release over the holidays this year, which we normally don't. But my partner and I, Gus, we decided that, you know, people are going to be home, they're not traveling. Let's just try it and see if we can get some traction as just a new test, and, you know, and see if it works. But I highly recommend trying new things, always looking back. If something's not working, just don't keep doing it just because that's your process. We've changed up how we do things so many times. And I think that's how you have to stay ahead of the game, and how you have to continue getting better, is just always, you know, basically critiquing yourself and finding those things that really worked, and really being like focused on trying to make that better. So we'll see how it goes. But honestly, from a lift standpoint and from a resource standpoint, I'm really proud of this new release strategy, because we're really giving this release a ton of marketing time, and it's getting a lot of eyes on it, like much more so than 2 years ago.
I love that concept. I think it sounds absolutely great. And definitely, you've got the mind of an entrepreneur. You know, everything you've just said is definitely like that forward thinking. What can we do better? I noticed also, like, I know you've sold, you know, like you said, you gave away bandanas, and you've had hats and t-shirts. And I noticed now on your website, the merch are leggings.
Yes.
So how did that come about?
That was actually really fun for us, because we were getting a lot of feedback from our female fans that they're, you know, like, this, I want something for me that's not unisex, that I can look cute in. And I find too that a lot of merchandise out there is really geared towards either unisex or men. And so I actually was able to partner. It's a local company here called Bombsheller. They, a friend of mine had a connect there, and she always saw me wearing leggings and knew about the label. And she was the one that made the connection. She's like, you know, I have this friend that has this company that does customized leggings. You guys should connect and see if you can make something happen. And that was a really great, you know, just a mutual, like we were talking and you know, suddenly the idea popped up in her head. But it ended up being really great for us because we started doing like leggings, like we did one for a release that was like rainbow colored. Colors was the name of the release, and those sold out like within 3 days of putting them up. They're really, you know, I think there was this hole again in the market for merch geared towards women. And as soon as these cropped up and the quality is good and the price point is good, they just sold like hotcakes. So we started doing it more geared around releases and offering it as a add-in for artists, because to mock up, we don't have to prepay for the leggings. They just buy and then they make it on demand. So from a inventory standpoint, I way like that better because I don't have to buy 100 and then like ship all those out. The company actually ships them out for me. All I have to do is just write in their address. So it's just so much easier. And then it makes the profit margin a little bit better too, because you don't have to deal with the mailing of all of that stuff. And it's worked out really well for us. And I'm trying to think of like what else we can do. Some guys suggested thongs and I was like, no, we need to think of something a little bit better, you know, but, you know, of course we want to have gear that's for everybody, and men can wear these too, but they are primarily for women.
Well, Melissa McPeters just asked, will you put out a hat again?
I would love to. Our hat actually sold, like, we don't have any left. And actually Cheech from Cheech and Chong, he wore our hat on the cover of this guitar magazine. And they ended up, because it's Mal, it said M-A-L. And I think because he's Hispanic, he was like, oh, bad. And that was kind of the thing we were going for. He had no idea it was like related to the label, but it was like awesome publicity for us. And the girl that does all of our merchandise is our art director, Carolyn Smith. She's just phenomenal. She's done a ton of release covers for us, most of our merchandise. So yeah, I mean, we're always trying to think of like something we can do that looks stylish, that will fit most people and have most sizes available. So yeah, a hat could definitely be in the cards for sure.
So, I mean, obviously you said, you know, MalLabel, malleable, you know, capable of being shaped or changed physically or mentally, which really comes in a good time, being that we're in a pandemic, right? Because everybody's had to change their life in some dramatic way. So what's, you know, where do you fund, you know, during these times?
You cut out a little bit, Kerry. Could you repeat your question?
So yeah, so now that we're in this pandemic, you know, I can still see like you have so much passion for what you're doing. Where do you find the energy and the passion during these times that are so uncertain?
Sure. I mean, honestly, it's just exciting to work with artists that are unknown, and finding something that's truly unique and being able to be the person to help elevate them and push them forward. And honestly, I love dance music, and I miss going to events, and it's been, I think, a really rough year for everybody in the music industry, especially having this huge, you know, money maker of events taken away from you. And we did one online festival over the weekend where we had a bunch of DJs play, but I feel like that's kind of played out now. Like everybody's been doing it and you're not getting as much attention. So we're trying to find ways to engage, show the new music, and be kind of more forward thinking than just doing what everybody else is doing. And I really have been liking these like short FX videos that we've been kind of centering around this like new thematic, like Blade Runner-esque kind of vibe. And I just enjoy the creativity of kind of thinking through what a whole campaign centered around a theme would look like, trying to figure out how can we best get all eyes on this now as everybody's at home and everybody's on their computers, and you know, there's a lot of content coming out. So it's, you know, I enjoy strategizing and I enjoy trying to kind of get ahead of things, and then also trying to figure out how can we still uplift these new artists that, you know, people haven't heard of before. And so for me, that's kind of where I find my drive is really the brainstorming strategies. I love trying to, like, you know, play that 3D chess and figure out like what could we do to push things forward, and what can we do that's different from what everybody else is doing, and how can we do it to the best of our abilities. And that's what continues pushing me along. And I hope one day we actually had one event. It was our first event in 2 years. It was scheduled in April, and we were going to have Qbert play. And it was a very cool lineup, but we had to like scrap the whole thing just like everyone had to. So I'm hoping, you know, we can get back to that one day, but in the meantime, how can we still, you know, get people excited about what we're doing? And I think having these interactive, like thematic videos have been really cool. And I'm thinking that for our next release, we might do like a Mad Max theme, which will be fun to kind of carry forward, get some animation, and you know, have more fan interaction that way too. But yeah, it's definitely been hard on everybody, but I think the one thing keeping me going is just that I like to just be competitive, and how can we be the best, and what can we do to really be unique. And that's yeah, basically what keeps me going.
Awesome. You have mentioned a couple times we, so I want to talk about like, who is the team? Like because you're obviously such a visionary, but obviously there's people around you that are supporting you with their talents as well. So what, not just like, sort of what are the people around you? What are their roles?
Sure. I mean, basically it's just me and my partner, Gustavo, who's been with me for like since the very beginning. He's a DJ himself, El Diablo. And he has a lot of FX experience. He's been doing a lot of our targeting marketing, actually like excelling at it even better than I have. And I'm kind of more now, especially with my day job. Gus is kind of doing all the day-to-day stuff. And then we're meeting and doing all of the creative planning, how we're going to, like, I'm more big picture and he's more day-to-day. And I think that really works for us because he has skills that I don't have. Like I suck at editing. I'm not great with Photoshop. I'm not great with any of that stuff, but I am really good with like market campaign strategization. And like, I'm great with like a lot of the operational things that, you know, contracts, how do we outreach? Can we build partnerships, licensing opportunities, that kind of stuff. And Gus is really kind of the creative drive right now.
Yeah.
And we've been friends for like ever. I mean, he came to my wedding, him and his wife, like we're very close, and I trust him to make decisions that if I can't be there, I know that he'll make the choice that I would agree with. We've had sporadic different people too that we work with to do like art design and things like that. We have a marketing person, Zan. We call her my twin. She's Canadian. She has her own like marketing shop up in Vancouver. And then we bring her in for like bigger campaign work where she can kind of do like outside of our core audience outreach. But the team is pretty small. I mean, it's basically just me and Gus, and then people that we bring in as we need to. But I do feel like we are a partnership, so that's why I say we a lot, because he definitely has as much as say now as I do.
Right. What's up, Gustavo? So how important are the trade magazines? And like, I remember you talking one time to me about how like you'll offer exclusives to certain trades to get in there.
Sure. I mean, we used to do that a lot for blogging and things like that. But honestly, I feel like the focus has shifted away from blogs, and the blogs don't really they're not getting as much visibility as they used to. They're putting stuff on SoundCloud, which doesn't, for me personally, I think the service can work for up and coming artists and getting heard if you haven't been heard before. But because Spotify drives so much of our revenue, for us, we would always prefer to give Spotify now the exclusive, because that will always generate the most revenue. If we give it to like another source, we're losing out on that streaming that we would be getting from a Spotify, basically Spotify. So we've actually changed that strategy too. I mean, we're always down to do interviews. We're always down to do any kind of like promo fielding, working and collaborating, doing interviews. But for us now, I want to pinpoint and basically funnel everyone to one place. And so because Spotify is just really working for us, we're just purely funneling to there now.
That makes sense. We have a question from San Francisco State. Do you see yourself ever working with other electronic music?
Oh, sure. I mean, we are definitely multi-genre. I mean, we've done Moonbaton, we've done house, we've done like drum and bass, all sorts of different stuff. It just honestly, like, if we like it and it strikes a chord with us, and we think it's good enough to now, because we're even being even more choosy with this new release format that we're doing. But if it hits all of those metrics, we would be down to do most any other genre. I think the only thing I don't really like is psytrance. I just can't stand psytrance.
That's fair. Alyssa asks, were there any internships or jobs that also helped lead you to creating your label?
Yeah, you know, right when I graduated from college, I got an internship at Live Nation, and I worked there for a summer. It was actually Bill Graham Presents, and then I think Live Nation ate them up. And that was really good, just like seeing how a bigger corporate entity, but at the time it was Bill Graham, so it wasn't as massive as Live Nation, but it was heading that direction. Had their whole I was in their marketing department, and how they set up all of their events, and how they had this like 360 campaign that they essentially, I think Live Nation was the first to kind of build that out, where they would have the release contract built into the event contract and all the merchandising and everything. And that's basically the idea that we had when we went from events to doing the label. So, I mean, I was just like the coffee girl. Like, I mean, I obviously wasn't doing anything like super important at Bill Graham, but seeing how the process worked there, and making those early connections, especially with like promoters and venue people, was really important for me. It taught me how to negotiate, and as you're meeting people for the first time, like the things to say and how to make connections, and that networking that later led to, okay, now I actually want something from you, and how do we like negotiate this out, but using those past connections. And I think that in this industry, like you have to be personable. You don't want to burn bridges. Like, even if you detest somebody, you never want to be like, fuck you, because who knows, they could be somebody that you need something from like 2 years down the line. And believe me, that has happened. Like, we have had artists that were just nobodies that are now touring internationally now. And, you know, I'm glad to still have that connection with them, where you know, maybe we had a rocky period or whatever, but we always maintained that relationship, and it's helped us for sure down the line. So I think in this industry, you have to constantly like network, and learn how to network like in a way that ingratiates yourself to people, where you come off like as somebody they want to work with. And to me, that's been like, I've used that skill for 12 plus years. Like, you want to be a charming person that is a connector, and knows how to use those connections to help yourself like move further.
That's right. One last question. What advice would you give to someone who is trying to start a record label that you wish you had known beforehand?
Sure. I think it's really having an understanding, like, honestly, this is kind of boring, but the legalese in what what you have to do for the artist, and really spelling that out in the contract, and having clear communication with the artist, so they know exactly what you are providing and exactly what they need to do. I have found consistently, because artists do not understand their contracts, or do not understand what they signed up for, that can lead to some aggravation down the road, because they didn't necessarily knew the terms of the agreement, or how we would do royalty reporting or things like that. And so I now, because of those instances, always walk the artist through the contract, always make sure we're on the same page on exactly what we're negotiating and signing for each other, because this is their art, this is their music. I want to make sure that they understand what we're providing, so there's no confusion and there's no aggravation down the line, where they think, oh, we're screwing them because they thought this, but this is the reality of the contract. And I mean, I know that sounds very boring, but it happens very consistently for me. And I find that a lot of artists sign contracts that they didn't understand the full, like, oh, wow, I'm signing away this song for perpetuity. I'm never going to have the rights for this again. Or, you know, I'm only going to get paid once a year versus quarterly or something like that. It's just very, very important to understand the relationship and communicate that very, very clearly.
Thank you. That is so true. Well, it is 7 o'clock, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for spending an hour with us. Everyone at San Francisco State is going to be happy to see this recording as well. And Mal, we wish you the best of luck, and we just can't wait to continue to see how MalLabel music blows up.